We want the numbers. Thank you, Mr. Arsenault. Mr. Choquette. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to all of you for being here today. I'll just go back to what Mr. Généreux said earlier. We're very proud of the institution that is Air Canada, and we're also very proud of the fact that it is a bilingual institution which is subject to the Official Languages Act. We hope that you feel the same way, and I think I've heard that you do. Now, I asked a question in the House of Commons to Mélanie Joly, the Minister of Canadian Heritage, who is, of course, responsible for official languages, and she said that in the circumstances, given the report, it's clear that Air Canada needs to respect the law. The status quo is unacceptable. And she continued to say that she would speak to the Minister of Transport and ask the committee to study this report. Now, have you had any communications either with people in the Minister's office, the Heritage Minister's office, or the Transport Minister's office following this report? Well, as you know, the report was issued last week. The report was issued last week. It was presented, or it was discussed, rather, before this committee, I believe, the following day. So that didn't leave a lot of time to discuss and debate the content of the report. That said, we've been clear that we need to have rules that apply to the entire industry. We will continue to repeat that message. We also believe that the Commissioner's office is not necessarily best placed to study private sector companies or airlines in particular. So that's why we are recommending that, well, to come back to the report, you may have been in contact with the Minister of Transport, given that, unfortunately, Bill C-10, which we disagree with because it will move a lot of jobs, but the Liberals were quick to move on that. And I know that you are making a lot of efforts, but in 2014-2015, the Commissioner noticed that there was only one recommendation out of 12 which had actually been applied. And that's from the 2011 report. How do you account for that? Well, this part of the Commissioner's report surprised us somewhat in the way it was worded. Even in a previous report of the Commissioner, he said that more of the recommendations had been actually 10 of the recommendations had been implemented, but only one had been fully implemented. So we can't really say that. Many of the 12 recommendations were applied. Now, since then, we've had discussions with the Commissioner to talk about the extent to which they were applied, the extent to which he was satisfied with that. But it's not fair to say that there was only one recommendation that was implemented. Several of them were. For us, that satisfies us. But now you may go further. Yes, now we have a plan of action. When it comes to the status quo, I can tell you, the status quo does not exist. Bilingualism and our application of our bilingual policy is constantly evolving. We hire new employees every year, which makes our company even more bilingual every year. Now, looking at the Commissioner's 2012 report, I'll read it here in English. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't have a lot of time. Perhaps we can talk about this in the second hour. I just want to talk about this report because, of course, you quoted it. What I read in this report, among other things, is that you're now going to start talking with official language minority community groups. I think that's a very good idea. And in fact, since 2009, the Association of Francophone and Acadian Communities said that more power should be given to the Commissioner. That was a recommendation that was made in 2009. Now, you're going to be consulting with these groups, and do you agree with this position that more power should be given to the Commissioner of Official Languages? And of course, perhaps you should all be working together, because what concerns me is that you seem to be working against the Commissioner, and the Commissioner is working against you. You're not implementing his recommendations, and so he's fighting back. And this is, it perhaps would be better for everyone if we could reach an agreement. Well, as I said, this is an industry where we really need more tools than the ones that the commissioner has, more tools in terms of expertise. It's a very complicated industry. I don't want to compare it to government agencies, but I can tell you that it's quite a complex industry. So I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but because I'm almost out of time, just would you agree with the idea? Well, we're talking about the Canadian Air Transport Agency, other airlines, airports, that entire community, that entire aviation community is affected. Now, if we all work together, of course, that's something that we would welcome. So you're not necessarily against the idea of agreements between the commissioner and yourself, so that you're not clashing. Because the problem now is that you seem to be working against each other and not finding any solutions. So, well, I'm not saying yes to that. I don't know if that's something we can do or not, but what I can tell you is that we're going to be working more closely with the aviation community, and we're going to be also working closely with the Canadian Air Transport Agency, which understands the industry much better. Thank you, Mr.